The November rain had started 5 minutes earlier, cold and sharp against my face as I stood at the bus stop she'd promised to drive me home from. The last bus was pulling away, the one I'd told her I needed to catch if she wasn't coming back. I didn't chase it. I didn't call her. I walked 3 blocks in the opposite direction to the car rental place that stayed open until 9, paid for a week up front, and drove to her apartment. Her spare key was still on my ring. I let myself in and packed everything of mine into 2 boxes: my clothes from her closet, my toothbrush, the books I'd left on her nightstand, the coffee maker I'd bought her for her birthday. I left her key on the kitchen counter next to a note that said only, "Don't contact me." By the time she called, 40 minutes later, I was already at my brother's place across town, unloading boxes into his guest room. I didn't answer. She called 6 more times that night. I blocked her number before the 7th attempt. The thing about self-respect is that it's a decision you make once, not a negotiation you entertain repeatedly. I'd learned that from watching my father tolerate my mother's close friendships with colleagues for 15 years before she finally left him for one of them. He'd spent those years explaining away her behavior, convincing himself that understanding meant strength, that patience meant love. I watched him become a shell of himself, and I promised I'd never make that mistake. Emma had crossed a line I'd made clear 6 months into our relationship, when her work husband jokes first started making me uncomfortable. I'd told her then, calmly and directly, "I don't care about your male friends, but if you ever prioritize one over me in a way that's disrespectful, I'm done. No discussion, no second chance. I won't compete for consideration in my own relationship." She'd laughed it off, said I was being dramatic, that Ryan was literally just a colleague. Tonight, she'd made me wait in the rain at a bus stop, after promising to drive me home from dinner at her parents' house. Because Ryan called and said his car had broken down and he needed a ride home from the office. It was 8:30. I lived 15 minutes away. Ryan lived 40 minutes in the opposite direction. She'd kissed my cheek, said she'd be back in 20 minutes, and asked me to wait. I'd asked her to drop me home first. It would have taken her 30 minutes total instead of 20. She'd said, "David, don't be difficult. Ryan's stranded. Just wait here. I'll be quick." That was the moment. That was the choice she made. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I said, "Okay," and watched her drive away, because I'd already decided. My brother Jake handed me a beer when I finished bringing in the last box. He didn't ask questions. He'd met Emma, watched her check her phone every 10 minutes during family dinners, noticed how she'd talk over me to tell Ryan from work stories to anyone who'd, "Listen, you good?" he asked. "I'm excellent," I said, and meant it. The relief was immediate and physical, like I'd been holding my breath underwater and finally surfaced. No more wondering when the next time would be that Ryan needed something. No more watching her face light up at his texts in ways it hadn't for mine in months. No more being the backup plan in my own relationship. She tried to come to Jake's the next morning. He answered the door and told her I didn't want to see her. She tried to push past him. He's 6'4" and played college football. She didn't get past him. "Tell him I'm sorry," she shouted from the porch. "Tell him it was just a ride. Tell him Ryan means nothing." Jake shut the door and turned to me. "You want me to tell you any of that?" "No." "Good call." She emailed me at work on Monday. I deleted it unread and filtered everything from her address to spam. She sent a letter to Jake's house. I threw it away unopened. She showed up at the gym, where she knew I worked out on Wednesday evenings. I walked past her to my car and drove away while she stood in the parking lot crying. I felt nothing. That's what surprised people later, when mutual friends tried to play mediator. They expected anger, heartbreak, the messy aftermath of a 2-year relationship ending. What they got was calm indifference. She made a mistake, her best friend Jessica told me when she cornered me at the coffee shop near my office 2 weeks later. She knows she messed up. She's devastated, David. Can't you at least talk to her? No. That's it? Just no? After 2 years? Jessica, she left me at a bus stop in the rain to drive another man home. That tells me everything I need to know about how she values me. There's nothing to discuss. But she explained. Ryan really was stranded. His car really did break down. She was just trying to help a friend. Then she could have dropped me home first. It would have taken 10 extra minutes. She chose not to. I'm not interested in being with someone who makes that choice. Jessica stared at me like I was being unreasonable. You're really going to throw away 2 years over one ride? I'm not throwing anything away. She did. I'm just accepting her decision. That was the conversation pattern for the next month. Mutual friends, her sister, even her mother called me. All of them with the same message. Emma was sorry. I was being too harsh. Relationships require forgiveness. Everyone makes mistakes. I told all of them the same thing. I'm not punishing her. I just don't want to be with her. Those are different things. What none of them understood, what Emma herself didn't understand, based on the increasingly desperate messages that somehow still found their way to me through various channels, was that it wasn't about anger or punishment. It was about clarity. She'd shown me who I was to her in that moment, someone whose comfort and dignity were less important than maintaining her availability to Ryan, someone whose explicit request could be dismissed as being difficult, someone who could be left waiting in the rain because surely he'd understand. Surely he wouldn't mind. Surely his needs could wait. I minded. I wasn't going to spend my life with someone who thought I shouldn't. The pattern had been there for months before that night, if I was honest with myself. The canceled plans when Ryan needed help with a presentation. The late nights at the office that somehow always involved Ryan staying late, too. The inside jokes I wasn't part of. The way she'd check her phone during our dates, smile at whatever he'd texted, then tell me it was just work stuff. I'd mentioned it before. Gently at first, then more directly. Each time she'd accused me of being jealous, insecure, controlling. She'd turn it around until I was the one apologizing for feeling uncomfortable with her behavior. Classic manipulation, though I didn't see it clearly until I had distance. The bus stop was just the culmination. The moment the pattern became undeniable. 3 weeks after I walked away, I ran into Ryan at a downtown bar where my colleagues had dragged me for happy hour. He was drunk enough to be honest. Man, I feel terrible about you and Emma, he slurred, cornering me near the restrooms. She's been a wreck at work. Crying in meetings, can't focus, keeps asking me if I think you'll take her back. What do you tell her? I tell her I don't know, man. I tell her I didn't mean to cause problems. My car really did break down that night. I believe you. He blinked, confused. You do? Sure. This isn't about you, Ryan. You needed a ride. You asked a friend. That's normal. This is about Emma choosing to make me wait in the rain instead of taking 10 minutes to drop me home first. You didn't make her do that. He processed this with the slow deliberation of someone 3 drinks past sober. She said you were being controlling. That you didn't want her to have male friends. I laughed, genuinely amused. I don't care about her male friends. I cared about being treated like I mattered. But it's good to know that's how she's framing it. You're really done? Like completely? Completely. He shook his head. Cold, man. That's cold. I left him there and went back to my table, where my colleague Nina was holding court with a story about her disastrous family Thanksgiving. She was funny, sharp, fully present in conversations, instead of half distracted by her phone. When she caught my eye and smiled, I smiled back. After happy hour, she asked if I wanted to grab dinner. We went to a Thai place around the corner and talked for 3 hours. She didn't mention an ex, didn't check her phone obsessively, didn't name-drop a work colleague every 10 minutes. When I drove her home, she thanked me for a great evening and asked if I wanted to do it again. I did. The difference between being with Nina and being with Emma was like the difference between breathing fresh air and not realizing you'd been suffocating. Nina made plans and kept them. She answered when I called. She listened when I talked, instead of waiting for her turn to speak. She introduced me to her friends with pride instead of treating me like an accessory she'd brought along. Small things revealed the contrast. Nina would text me during her workday just to say she was thinking about me. Emma had treated texts from me like interruptions, but dropped everything to respond to Ryan. Nina asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. Emma had nodded along while clearly thinking about something else. Nina made me feel chosen. Emma had made me feel tolerated. Emma found out I was seeing someone new 6 weeks after I'd walked away. I know because Jessica called me, furious. Are you kidding me right now? You wouldn't even talk to Emma, wouldn't give her a chance to make things right, and now you're already dating someone else? Yes. That's messed up, David. That's really messed up. Emma's been killing herself trying to figure out how to fix things with you, and you just moved on like she never mattered? Jessica, I moved on because she didn't matter. Not anymore. Not after she showed me I didn't matter enough to her. One mistake. She made one mistake. And I made one decision. I'm allowed to do that. She hung up on me. The friend group began to fracture after that. People chose sides. Most of Emma's friends went with her, naturally. Most of our mutual friends tried to stay neutral, which in practice meant pressuring me to be reasonable and give Emma another chance. A few people, mostly the ones who'd actually paid attention to how Emma treated me, told me privately they thought I'd made the right call. I always wondered why you put up with her shit, my friend Tom said over beers one night. The way she'd dismiss you in front of everyone, make those little cutting jokes at your expense, act like you were lucky she was with you. I watched you get smaller over the 2 years you were together. I didn't realize it was happening. That's how it works, man. It's gradual. Death by 1,000 cuts. You just kept accommodating, kept being understanding, kept giving her the benefit of the doubt, and she kept taking more space while giving you less. He was right. Looking back with clear eyes, I could see the progression. How I'd stopped suggesting restaurants because she always had a reason mine weren't good enough. How I'd stopped talking about my work because she'd get bored and change the subject to hers. How I'd stopped asking her to meet my friends because she always had something else to do. I'd shrunk myself to fit into the space she was willing to give me. And it still hadn't been enough. Emma herself showed up at my actual apartment, the one I'd moved into after 2 weeks at Jake's, on a Friday night in January. She'd somehow figured out my address, probably through the same friend network that kept trying to broker reconciliation. I opened the door to find her standing there with flowers and tears already streaming down her face. David, please just let me explain. No. You won't even listen to me? There's nothing to listen to. You made a choice. I made a choice. We're both living with them. I made a mistake. I was thoughtless. I was stupid. I wasn't thinking about how it would make you feel. Emma, you were thinking exactly about how it would make me feel. You knew I'd be upset. That's why you told me not to be difficult. You just didn't think I'd leave over it. She wiped her eyes, clutching the flowers. I miss you. I miss us. Everything's wrong without you. I'm sorry you're unhappy, but I'm not. That stopped her. She stared at me, processing. You're not unhappy? No. I'm great, actually. Better than I've been in months. Because of her? Because of whoever you're seeing? Because I'm not with someone who makes me their second choice. I started to close the door. She put her hand against it. Ryan and I aren't even friends anymore, she said desperately. I stopped talking to him. I told him we couldn't be close like that if it bothered you. I'll do whatever you want, David. I'll make it right. You can't unfuck this, Emma. You showed me what I needed to see. Now I'm acting on it. That's not fair. You left me at a bus stop in the rain so you could drive him home. Because he mattered more in that moment. Because my comfort, my time, my dignity, none of it was as important as making sure he wasn't inconvenienced. That's what you did. You can't undo that. You can't make me unsee it. I love you. I don't believe you. And even if I did, it wouldn't be enough. I closed the door while she was still crying. Through the peephole, I watched her stand there for 5 minutes before finally walking away, leaving the flowers on my doormat. I threw them in, the trash without bringing them inside. The finality of that moment felt important. She'd tried everything. Apologies, promises, grand gestures, cutting off Ryan, proclaiming her love. None of it moved me because none of it changed the fundamental reality. She'd shown me who I was to her when it mattered. Everything after was just her being upset that I'd believed what she'd shown me. My father called me around that time. We didn't talk often. The divorce had damaged him in ways he never fully recovered from, and I think seeing me reminded him of his own failures. But he called, said Jake had mentioned what happened, asked if I was doing okay. I'm doing great, Dad. Jake said you won't even talk to her, that you just walked away. That's right. Silence on the line. Then, I wish I'd done that. With your mother. The first time, or the 5th time, or any of the times before it got so bad I couldn't recognize myself anymore. I learned it from watching you, Dad. Learned what not to do. Smart kid. His voice was rough with something that might have been pride or might have been regret. Smarter than your old man. You taught me the lesson. I just learned it. We talked for an hour after that, the longest conversation we'd had in years. He told me things I'd been too young to understand when it was happening. How my mother had slowly eroded his sense of self-worth, made him feel like he was never enough, convinced him that his discomfort with her friendships was his own insecurity. How he'd stayed because he loved her, because he'd invested so much time, because he kept thinking if he just tried harder, understood more, gave more, she'd finally choose him. She never did. And by the time he finally left, he'd lost himself so completely, it took him years to remember who he'd been before her. Don't do that, he said. Don't lose yourself trying to be enough for someone who's already decided you're not. I won't. Good. That's good, son. Nina and I had been seeing each other for 2 months when Valentine's Day rolled around. She was warm and easy and present. Everything Emma hadn't been for the last year of our relationship, if I was honest with myself. She made plans and kept them. She answered her phone when I called. She introduced me to her friends and made space for me in her life instead of making me fight for scraps of attention. I took her to dinner at an expensive restaurant downtown, the kind of place I'd suggested to Emma dozens of times only to be told it was too pricey. We should save money. Nina ordered the most expensive thing on the menu and told me she was worth it with a grin that made me laugh out loud. We ran into Emma in the parking lot afterward. She was with a group of friends, heading into the restaurant as Nina and I were leaving. I saw Emma see us, saw her face register first confusion, then recognition, then something that looked like physical pain. She stopped walking. Her friends continued a few steps before realizing she wasn't with them. Nina's hand was in mine. She looked beautiful, happy, completely at ease. I probably looked the same. Emma's eyes filled with tears. One of her friends, someone I didn't recognize, came back and touched Emma's arm. Em? You okay? Emma didn't answer. She was staring at me and Nina like we were evidence of something she couldn't quite accept. I didn't stop. I didn't let go of Nina's hand. I didn't acknowledge Emma beyond the brief eye contact. I walked past her to my car, opened the door for Nina, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw Emma standing alone while her friends clustered around her, still staring after my car. Nina didn't ask about it until we were back at her place. That was her, wasn't it? Your ex? Yes. She looked devastated. Probably. Nina studied me in the soft lamplight of her living room. You really don't care at all? I care that she's hurting the same way I'd care about any person hurting. But I'm not responsible for it, and I'm not interested in fixing it. What did she do? You never told me details. So I told her. The whole story, start to finish. The bus stop, the rain, the choice Emma made, the decision I made in response, the months of Ryan taking priority, the dismissals of my concerns, the gradual erosion of my place in her life. Nina was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Good for you." Good for me? For knowing your worth, for not tolerating disrespect just because you'd invested time in the relationship. A lot of people would have made excuses for her, convinced themselves it wasn't a big deal, stayed and been miserable. My dad did that. And you learned from it. I tried to. She kissed me then, soft and deliberate. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you're here. I was glad too. Emma's Instagram, which I'd never blocked, just stopped checking, became a chronicle of her unraveling over the next few months. I didn't seek it out, but mutual friends kept screenshot sending things to Jake with commentary, and Jake showed me because he thought it was both sad and ridiculous. Vague posts about regret and mistakes, and not knowing what you have until it's gone. Photos of herself looking thin and exhausted with captions about learning hard lessons. Eventually, a long post about the person I pushed away, and how she understood now that she'd taken me for granted, prioritized the wrong things, failed to see what mattered until it was too late. The post went on for paragraphs, about how she'd replayed that night at the bus stop 1,000 times, how she'd seen my face when she asked me to wait, seen something shift in my expression, but hadn't understood what it meant until I was already gone. How she'd thought I was being dramatic at first, that I'd cool off and come back, that love was supposed to survive mistakes like this. How she'd realized, too late, that I hadn't left because I didn't love her. I'd left because I loved myself more. She's really going through it, Jake said, showing me his phone at a Sunday barbecue at his place. You feel bad at all? No? Not even a little? Jake, I feel the same way I'd feel if I heard she got food poisoning from a restaurant she insisted on going to after I warned her about the health code violations. Sorry that happened. Could have been avoided. Glad it's not my problem. He laughed and pocketed his phone. You're cold-blooded, little brother. Maybe. Or maybe I just understood that sympathy doesn't require self-sacrifice, and compassion doesn't mean absorbing someone else's consequences. The real consequence for Emma came 6 months after I left. Through the same friend network that had spent months trying to reconcile us, I learned that she'd finally started dating again. Some guy from her gym, apparently. Someone who seemed nice and stable. According to Jessica's updates to Jake, Emma had been trying hard to do things differently this time. Being more attentive, more present, making her partner a priority. It lasted 3 weeks before he broke up with her. The reason, according to Jessica's latest update, Emma couldn't stop talking about her ex. Couldn't stop comparing their relationship to what she'd had with me. Couldn't stop explaining what she'd learned from losing me, what she'd do differently now, how much she regretted what she'd done. Every date turned into a therapy session about her past relationship. Every conversation circled back to the lesson she was still learning. "She's stuck," Jessica had said to Jake. "Completely stuck. She can't get past what happened with you, David. She can't move forward because she's still looking backward." The gym guy had apparently told her he felt like he was dating her regret, not her. That he couldn't compete with the ghost of a relationship she'd destroyed. That he deserved someone who was actually present with him, not someone still living in the past. The irony wasn't lost on me. Emma had lost me because she couldn't be present with me, too busy being available for Ryan. Now she was losing other people because she couldn't be present with them, too busy mourning what she'd lost with me. Jake asked if I wanted the details. I told him no. Because here's what I'd figured out in the months since I walked away. Emma's unhappiness wasn't my concern anymore. Her regret, her growth, her lessons learned, none of it had anything to do with me. She'd made her choice. I'd made mine. She had to live with hers. I got to enjoy mine, and I was enjoying it. Nina and I moved in together after dating for 8 months. Too fast, according to some people, but it felt right. She was everything I hadn't known I needed. Present, attentive, respectful of boundaries, enthusiastic about building a life together instead of keeping me as an accessory to hers. The difference showed up in everyday moments. Nina would cancel plans with her friends if I asked her to. Not because I demanded it, but because when it mattered, I mattered more. She'd check with me before making plans that affected us both. She'd turn her phone off during dinner because our time together was sacred. She'd talk about us in terms of we and our future instead of I and my plans. It wasn't about control or possession. It was about partnership. About two people choosing each other consistently instead of one person fitting the other into the gaps between their real priorities. We hosted a housewarming party in October, a year after I'd walked away from that bus stop. Friends, colleagues, Nina's family, Jake and his wife. The apartment was full of warmth and laughter and people who actually showed up when they said they would. Emma somehow heard about the party. Small city, overlapping social circles, the inevitable information bleed. She sent a text from a new number I didn't have saved. "I heard you're living with someone. I'm happy for you. Hope you're happy. I'm sorry for everything. I wish I could go back and do that night differently. I wish I'd chosen you." I read it twice, then deleted it without responding. Nina came up behind me, wrapped her arms around my waist. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect." And it was. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and we were cleaning up the remnants of the party, Nina asked me something I hadn't expected. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd given her another chance?" I thought about it honestly. No, because I already know what would have happened. She would have promised to do better, and maybe she would have for a while. But eventually there would have been another Ryan, another situation where someone else's needs seemed more urgent than mine, another moment where she made me feel like I was being difficult for wanting to be prioritized, and I would have either left then, or I would have stayed and lost myself trying to be understanding. "So you think it was always going to end?" I think it ended the moment she drove away and left me standing there. Everything after that was just me accepting reality instead of pretending it was something else. Nina was quiet, processing. Then, "I'm glad you have that clarity. I'm glad you know what you deserve. I learned it from watching what happens when you don't." We finished cleaning in comfortable silence, the kind of ease that comes from being with someone who doesn't make you negotiate for basic respect. The following months brought more evidence that I'd made the right choice. Nina got promoted at work and celebrated by taking me to dinner, not by staying late with a male colleague. When her ex reached out asking to meet for coffee, she told him no, and showed me the message without me having to ask. When her friends invited her to a girls' weekend, she asked if I minded first. And when I said I didn't, she went and texted me pictures the whole time because she wanted me to feel included. These weren't grand gestures. They were just the baseline of respect that should exist in any healthy relationship. But after Emma, they felt revolutionary. I ran into Ryan one more time, about 1.5 years after everything happened. Same downtown area, different bar. He was sober this time, there with what looked like a date. He saw me, hesitated, then came over while his date was in the restroom. David, hey. Ryan. Look, I just wanted to say, I know things got weird with you and Emma. I know I was part of that. I'm sorry, man. I didn't realize how much it was affecting your relationship. You weren't part of it. Emma was. She made choices. You were just the occasion for those choices. He frowned, working through that. She told people you were jealous, that you couldn't handle her having male friends. She can tell people whatever she needs to tell them. But that's not what happened. What happened is that she put your needs ahead of mine in a way that was disrespectful, and I left. That's the entire story. She really spiraled after you left. Like really bad. Couldn't focus at work, eventually switched departments to get away from me, stopped socializing. She was wrecked. Okay. He blinked. Okay? That's it? What do you want me to say, Ryan? I'm sorry she had consequences for her actions? I'm not. She chose what she chose. I chose what I chose. She got to experience the fallout from her decision. That's how choices work. But you really never thought about going back? Trying again? Not once. Even when you heard how bad she was doing? Especially not then. Ryan, if I'd gone back because she was suffering, what would that have taught her? That she could treat me however she wanted and I'd come back if she just suffered enough afterward? That's not love. That's just trauma bonding. He looked uncomfortable, like I'd said something that hit too close to home. I guess I never thought about it like that. Most people don't. They think suffering equals love, that tolerating disrespect equals commitment. But it doesn't. It just equals suffering and disrespect. His date came back. He returned to his table. I stayed at the bar with my thoughts. The truth was exactly what I'd told him. I'd never once regretted leaving. Not in the immediate aftermath, not during the months of attempted reconciliation, not when I heard through the grapevine how much Emma was struggling, not when I saw her devastated face in that parking lot. Because I'd learned something crucial from watching my father. Staying with someone who doesn't respect you doesn't make you noble. It makes you complicit in your own diminishment. Emma had shown me exactly how much I mattered to her in that moment at the bus stop. Everything that came after, the apologies, the flowers, the promises to change, the Instagram posts about lessons learned, was just her being upset that I'd believed what she showed me. I'd chosen to believe it. And in doing so, I'd chosen myself. Nina and I got engaged 2 years after we met. Small proposal, nothing dramatic. Just the two of us on a weekend trip to the mountains, watching sunset from a hiking trail, me asking if she wanted to make this permanent. She said yes before I finished the question. We set a date for the following spring, started planning a small wedding, immediate family and close friends, the kind of celebration that felt authentic instead of performative. Nina's parents flew in from Seattle to meet me officially, and her father pulled me aside during dinner. Nina told us about your last relationship, he said, about how you ended it. I waited, unsure where this was going. I respect that, he continued. Most young men these days don't know when to walk away. They think staying makes them loyal when really it just makes them doormats. You knew your worth. That's rare. I learned it the hard way. The best lessons usually are. Just promise. Me, you'll keep knowing it. Keep treating yourself like you matter. Because you do. And my daughter deserves someone who knows that. I promise. Emma sent a message through Jessica one last time when she heard about the engagement. Jessica texted Jake, who told me only because he thought I should know Emma had finally accepted reality. The message was simple. Tell him I'm happy for him. Tell him I understand now why he couldn't forgive me. Tell him I hope he has a beautiful life. I didn't respond. There was nothing to respond to. She finally understood what I'd understood that night in the rain. Some things can't be fixed because they were never broken. They were just finally seen clearly. The wedding was perfect. Nina in white, me in navy, both of us surrounded by people who showed up and stayed. Jake was my best man. He made a toast about knowing when to walk away from things that diminish you and toward things that elevate you. My brother figured that out young, he said, raising his glass. Some people spend their whole lives learning that lesson. David learned it in a single moment and never looked back. That's the kind of clarity I wish everyone had. To David and Nina, may you always choose each other first. Everyone drank. Nina kissed me. Life moved forward. I heard through distant channels that Emma eventually moved to another city, started over completely. New job, new friends, new life. Apparently she's doing okay now. In therapy, working on herself, dating someone who doesn't know about her past patterns. I hope she's happy. I genuinely do. But I don't think about her much. She's a lesson I learned, a boundary I enforced, a choice I made that led me to exactly where I needed to be. Sometimes Nina and I pass that bus stop on our way to dinner at her parents' house. She knows the story. Everyone close to us knows the story. It's become almost mythical in our friend group. The night David walked away and never looked back. Do you think about it? She asked me once as we drove past the stop. What you'd be doing if you'd stayed? I'd be miserable, I said without hesitation. Or divorced, or both. You don't think she would have changed? That losing you would have taught her something? Maybe it did teach her something. But the lesson wasn't mine to give by sacrificing my self-respect to teach it. She needed to learn that some choices have permanent consequences. I needed to learn that walking away is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. And now? Now I'm married to someone who'd never leave me at a bus stop in the rain. So I'd say the lesson worked out pretty well. She laughed and took my hand. We drove past the stop and into our future, leaving the past exactly where it belonged. Behind us, in the rain, a memory of the moment I chose myself and discovered that it was the best choice I ever made. Some people call that cold. Some call it unforgiving. Some say I should have given Emma grace, understanding, the space to prove she could do better. But here's what I know. Grace doesn't require self-abandonment. Understanding doesn't mean accepting disrespect. And the space to prove you can do better is something you give yourself after you leave relationships that require you to be smaller. Emma needed to learn that lesson. I needed to learn that I was worth more than waiting in the rain. We both did. We both moved on. The difference is I moved on to happiness, and she moved on to regret. That's not cruelty. That's just consequences. And consequences, I've learned, are the most honest teachers we ever meet. I'm grateful I met that teacher on a rainy November night at a bus stop. I'm grateful I listened. I'm grateful I learned. And I'm most grateful that I never, not once, looked back. Years later, when friends ask me for relationship advice, I tell them the same thing my father eventually told me. The moment you start negotiating for basic respect, you've already lost. Walk away. before you forget what you're worth. Some listen, some don't. Some learn the hard way, like my father did. But I learned it in a single moment, in the rain, at a bus stop, when someone I loved chose someone else, and I chose myself. Best decision I ever made.